What is communication? John Dewey describes communication as a breakdown of two major categories. The first category, transmission, which people more commonly think of, views communication as the flow of information. The second category, ritual, views communication as the representation of shared beliefs. Ritual thinks of each individual as person as the principal actor on their own world stage, and communication is really the person's interaction with their world. Here's the problem. Most people view communication as either transmission or ritual. However, in order for us to more properly understand what communication really is, we must be able to think about transmission and ritual at the same time. However, at its core, we cannot forget that communication is most fundamentally about society and the relationships we form, along with the passing of knowledge. Understanding communication as the interaction of transmission and ritual is a complex systems problem, which is hard to visualize using conventional approaches. So in order for us to fully understand communication as both transmission and ritual, this complex system, let's go back in time and look at where it all began. In the beginning of time, everything was passed on orally, with the passing of stories shared around a campfire. However, as Dewey describes, it was all for the ultimate goal of spreading religion. From 3500 to 2900 BC, the Phoenicians developed an alphabet. The Sumerians developed cuneiform writing, which is pictographs transcribed onto clay tablets, and the Egyptians developed hieroglyphic writing. And in 1775 BC, Greeks used a phonetic alphabet written from left to right. This time period basically harkened the beginning of the written word. In 200 to 100 BC, in Egypt and China, people commonly delivered messages on horseback to different messenger relay stations. Sometimes fire messages were used for purposes such as signaling war. In the year 14, the Romans established the first postal service, allowing people from neighboring towns to write letters to each other and keep in contact despite their distance. From the 5th century to the 15th century was the Middle Ages, aka the Dark Ages, which is often characterized as a time of ignorance and superstition where religion was placed above all. In 1455, Johannes Gutenberg invents the printing press on which he prints the first Bible. Of course, it all goes back to the sole purpose of spreading religion. The 18th century, however, marked the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and the separation of church and state. In 1831, Joseph Henry invents the first electric telegraph. This technology allows people to communicate from town to town at an even quicker rate. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell patented the first electric telephone. This marks the beginning of sound as the designated form of communication. In 1916, there was the first radios with tuners to different stations. Families used to sit around the radio listening to different stories. They could listen to the president giving talks, or in 1938, Orson Welles broadcasted War of the Worlds, convincing the people of Springfield that an actual alien invasion was taking place. In the 1940s, televisions became popular and scheduled television broadcasts began. This was the unification of sound and moving images into families' homes. Before the TV, printing was considered to be the main medium, but TV gave people access to information and knowledge instantly. It brought families together and allowed for the quick dispersion of information. However, at the same time, it has given us couch potatoes, as television is more of a device of consumption versus interaction, just as this guy is consuming his potato chips. The American Academy of Pediatrics reports that children who watch more than 4 hours of television a day are more likely to become overweight. In the 1950s, computers began to be sold commercially, hearkening the age of information science. In 1969, ARPANET, the first internet, started, but was mostly confined to the government, and it wasn't until 1994 that the U.S. government released control of internet, and WWW, or the World Wide Web, was born, allowing every person to have access to the internet. Communication became light speed as people from all around the world can communicate instantly. Not only can people communicate with one another instantly through email, but the internet also allows for the free flow of knowledge and the open sharing of ideas, increasing technological innovation. In 1979, the first cellular phone communication network started in Japan. This allowed people to talk to whoever they wanted whenever they wanted. A fun thing to notice, though, is if you're ever in a public space with a lot of people, such as an airport, but notice that everyone is talking on their phone but not to each other. Of course, this sometimes translates even more awkwardly in social situations, like in this situation where John and Mary are on a romantic date. John gets a call on his cell phone, and as we can see, Mary's not too happy about being ignored on their date. At the same time, the cell phone is not always the devil's advocate and can sometimes play Cupid, as young couples use their cell phones as a flirtation device. In mid-1990s, texting became popular. However, if the advent of the cell phone did not already change our communication etiquette, texting created even more of a dilemma, such as when does one decide to text and when does one decide to call. In Japan, we can clearly see this cultural divide between the youth and the elderly. The youth prefer to text their immediate friends and families as it is more comfortable, whereas the elders only text their colleagues as a sign of respect. Besides changing our communication etiquette, texting has also created a whole new language, introducing abbreviations and slangs. In the world of texting, speed takes precedence over spelling. In the 2000s, we see the explosion of social networking with Facebook, where people have hundreds and hundreds of Facebook friends, and Twitter, where you have 100 characters or less to post every thought that may come to your head, including what you had for breakfast, what you had for lunch, or what you had for dinner. The language conventions of texting carried over to these social networks, creating a more informal transaction between people. These slangs may be seen as destroying proper grammar, but in the end, it is also a sign of comfort, as when people become more comfortable with each other, the language becomes much less formal. This only further increases people's relationships and humans' inherent need to be social. We can see the explosion of knowledge and information transfer instantaneously now. If there is a revolution going on in the Middle East, everyone can instantaneously hear about it. Or if a tsunami hits a country, they can instantly send out messages to neighboring countries, and neighboring countries can quickly respond with aid. Everyone can easily be both a content creator and a content consumer, enabling knowledge and ideas to circulate at rapid speed. On the other hand, in terms of our information revolution, it also means that information is constantly bombarding us at all times. With Google tracking our preferences, it means that personalized ads constantly pop up everywhere, and our privacy settings are constantly being pushed back. Today, we are constantly connected. 4.1 billion people around the world have cell phones. And with the advent of video chat, FaceTime, and YouTube, video is becoming the new mode of communication. Technology like video chat enables face-to-face communication, such as giving soldiers the opportunity to talk to their wife and children at home. As we head towards the future, a whole plethora of communication technology awaits us. Our language and etiquette of communication will ever be changing, for the better and for the worst. However, as long as we balance quality and quantity as well as transmission and ritual, and adapt to our ever-changing world, we can embrace the future and richness of communication technology to strengthen our own interpersonal relationships, as well as further develop society as a whole.